Hi guys. I usually do my videoing out on the back porch, but today it was so hot I decided I was going to come in where there was air conditioning, and boy does it feel good. It was a good choice. And it was a good choice that you decided to join us today to learn just a little bit more about God's Word. We're going to pick up where we left off last week. Last week we talked about who God chose to replace King Saul. Do you remember who it was? It was David. And even though God had Samuel anoint David to be the next king, he didn't put him on the throne right away. But he was with David, and he gave David great success in fighting his enemies. We saw last week him defeat Goliath, and he defeated many more enemy armies with God's help. That would be a good thing, I would think, for the nation of Israel. But it really made Saul jealous when David defeated so many enemies, because the people started giving him all the credit for their success and not King Saul. This made Saul so mad that he finally decided he was going to kill David. And that is what our story is about today. So as we're listening to the story, I want you to listen very carefully to not only what happens, but how David feels and what he does when King Saul is after him. So let's listen carefully.
David was hiding in the wilderness. He had served King Saul and won many battles. But now, Saul was jealous of David and wanted to kill him. Saul took 3,000 men and went looking for David. David and his men were hiding in the back of a cave when Saul happened to pass by. Saul decided to go inside. David's men saw Saul and said, "Look, God said he would hand your enemy over to you. This is the day. You can do whatever you want to him." David got close to Saul and secretly cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Saul didn't realize that David was there. David felt bothered about what he had done, and he told his men, "I won't fight the king. God chose him." So David did not let his men fight against Saul. Then Saul left the cave and went on his way. David left the cave and called to Saul, "My lord the king." Saul turned around and David knelt low before him. "Why do you believe people who say I'm trying to hurt you?" David asked. "See, God handed you over to me today in the cave. I had a chance to kill you, but I showed mercy." David showed Saul the corner of the robe that he had cut. "I have done nothing against you," David said. "God might punish you, but I will never harm you. Let God decide who is right and who is wrong. May he protect me from you." When Saul heard David's words, he cried. "You are more righteous than I," Saul said, "because you have done what is good to me, though I have done what is evil to you. Most people would kill an enemy, but you have let me go. May God reward you for your kindness." Saul realized God was with David, and he knew David would be the king of Israel. "Promise me you won't kill my family," Saul said. So David promised. Then Saul went home, and David and his men returned to their hiding place. David showed mercy to Saul, his enemy, because David trusted God's plan. Jesus also trusted his Father's plan. He died on the cross so his enemies could experience God's mercy and live forever as part of God's family.
Did you listen carefully to the story? Did you figure out what David did when he found out Saul was trying to kill him? He ran off and hid out, didn't he? What if that had been you? What would you have done if you found out somebody was trying to harm you? Would you hide out? Would you run? Would you call the police? Where was it that David hid? He hid in a cave, didn't he? And who do you think wandered into that cave? Lo and behold, it was King Saul. Now, when Saul wandered into that cave, he didn't know David was in it. And David was very quiet. He was back there with his men. And his men were going, David, this is your chance. God's giving you the chance to kill your enemy. Did David take advantage of that? No. He crept up on Saul, and instead of harming him, he cut the corner of his robe off. Then, when Saul left, David came out and showed him the robe and let him know that he could have harmed him, but he chose not to. Had David done anything to give Saul a good reason to chase after him and try to kill him? He hadn't, had he? So if that had been you in the cave and Saul wandered in while you were there hidden, what do you think you might have done? Would you have taken advantage of the opportunity to get even with Saul? Would you have cut the corner of his robe off like David did? Would you have just been quiet? Would you have listened to your men and killed King Saul so that you could become king? Well, David trusted God to protect him, and he gave God the opportunity to do any punishing. You know, when David showed Saul the corner of his robe, Saul recognized that David had shown him great kindness and mercy, and that he could have taken his life. David had a choice to make. He showed mercy, but he could have chosen revenge, or he could have just chosen justice. Those are 3 words I want us to look at for just a minute, and then we're going to play a game with them. So let me see if I've got the other one. Yeah. So let's look at the definition of mercy for a minute. Mercy. Mercy means withholding punishment that is deserved. That means that you should be in trouble for something, but when somebody shows you mercy, they don't punish you for what you deserve to be punished for. Let's look at another word. This one is justice. Justice is giving punishment that is deserved. Have you ever gotten justice? I know when I was little, sometimes I got justice. Sometimes justice in the form of lost opportunities. Sometimes justice was time out in the corner. Sometimes it was even worse than that. Justice. And the other word I want us to look at is revenge. Revenge is trying to harm someone because she or he hurt you. Now, David had the opportunity to choose from all of these words. He could have shown revenge to Saul, he could have shown mercy to Saul, or he could have been just with Saul. Those are important words because we need to understand them and realize that we have to make choices every day in situations, whether we are going to show mercy, justice, or revenge. So on the website, I have made a sheet of words that say mercy, justice, and revenge. You don't have to print that off. You can just make your own cards. But I printed those off. If I can find my scissors, here they are. I'm going to simply cut them apart and into squares. And then I'm going to fold them in half and drop them down in a container. Let me grab my container. I'll be right back. Okay, I've got my container and I have the words down in it. And the reason I printed so many is so that you can play the game over and over, or you can share and play with your friends and your sister or brother or mom and dad, any of those. But here's how it works. We're going to do a role play or an acting out of something. And what you're going to have to do is act out whatever word you draw. You're going to either have to act out mercy, revenge, or justice to the situation I'm going to read. Let me give you an example. So your sibling broke one of your favorite toys while playing with it without your permission. Now, to play the game, I'm going to just reach in here and pull one out. Don't know what it's going to be. It was to show mercy. My job is to take that situation and show mercy. So I could show mercy by not getting mad at my little brother or sister for doing that. And maybe even mercy by saying, you know what? That toy was really important to me, but I know you really liked it too. I know it's broken now, but I'm going to let you have it. What are some of the other things you could have done? Had I pulled out the one that was revenge, I could say, you just wait till Mom and Dad get home. You're going to be in such big trouble. I'm telling. As soon as they get home, I'm telling. Or you could have gone screaming through the house and told on them anyway. Or I could have pulled out the card that said justice and said, you know, I'm going to tell Mom and Dad what you did, and I think that you need to buy me another toy. That would have been justice because it was deserved. They played with your toy without asking. So that's what we're going to do, and I am going to print these off and put them on the website so that you can play that game at home. I hope you do, because it's good to practice deciding what you would do, whether you would show revenge, justice, or show mercy. I think when we show mercy, we show that we realize that we can make mistakes too, and that we can be forgiving, and that we can let God do the punishing, just like David did.